What's going on, guys? Welcome back to United View. Hope everyone is doing very well, having a good Sunday afternoon, morning, evening, whatever it is, wherever you are watching this video. We've got a bit of a Manchester United transfer news to get into on this fine Sunday. Hope you're keeping chilled here in the UK. It is boiling. It is currently 31 degrees here in the UK. And I know what people are going to say, no, where I am, that's nothing. But here, it's boiling. As you can probably tell, I'm hot, and things are maybe-ish hot-ish when it comes to the world of Manchester United transfers. So we are going to talk a little bit about David De Gea, the latest surrounding his future, because for someone that in less than, 7 days' time, isn't it? 7 days, 6 days, I'll get there eventually, it's the heat. 6 days' time could no longer be a Manchester United player in terms of being a free agent, his contract expiring on the 30th of June, and him being a free agent on July 1st, there could be renewed hope if you're a fan of De Gea, if you're De Gea pro De Gea, that he could be signing a new contract, or at the very least, talks could continue between him and Manchester United over a possible new contract, so he could possibly be staying. We've got details on that, and also a little bit when it comes to Mason Mount, the latest regarding the bid that's still on the table, but United looking at alternatives, etc., etc. So we are going to talk about that too. So be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe at bottom right-hand corner. Let's talk a bit about David De Gea. Yes, it was reported quite late last night and a little bit more this morning. And really, the reason I wanted to do this video is because actually we've heard from actual Manchester United goalkeeping scouts, their perspective on this, which makes it quite interesting too. So it was reported by The Mirror late last night that David De Gea's bid to bring Manchester United back into talks over a new contract is being strengthened by Erik ten Hag's reluctance to splash the cash on a new goalkeeper. Manchester United's last offer to David De Gea is believed to be in excess of £200,000 a week. Of course, a significant reduction on his £375,000 a week current contract that he's on that expires in just under a week's time. David De Gea reportedly, according to the report, is aware that Ten Hag has other priorities this summer, and his advisors feel that will strengthen their position in negotiations as the clock ticks down over the coming days. Sales could add another £100 million plus to Ten Hag's summer transfer budget, but the Dutchman would still prefer De Gea to stay as his number one rather than spend a significant sum on a replacement goalkeeper. So really sort of conflicting messages sort of coming out there about David De Gea, isn't it? Because you've got the facts. What are the facts? Okay, let's take a step back here. What are the facts? The facts are, right now, De Gea hasn't signed a new contract, or a new contract hasn't been agreed, rather. De Gea, and this is quite odd because you've got kind of a lot of difference between reports at this point in time, haven't you? You've got a contract was agreed weeks ago and it's waiting for sign-off from Erik ten Hag. You've then got, actually, their last offer was 200k a week and maybe De Gea didn't accept that. So De Gea and United might now come back to the table with less than a week to go. You've also got Ten Hag wants De Gea to stay, but then you've also got Ten Hag wants to bring Andre Onana in, and he's decided he wants to have a keeper that's better with his feet. You've also got that Ten Hag doesn't want to spend a lot of his budget on a goalkeeper this summer, but then you've also got, actually, he wants to bring Onana in for about 50 million euros. So my point is that, like with everything at Manchester United in this transfer window so far, like with the takeover stuff, who really knows? I don't have a good answer for you because I don't think anyone truly knows what's going on. The fundamental facts are that as of right now, at the time of recording this video, David De Gea has not put pen to paper on a new contract, neither have United signed off on that deal too. So clearly there is an impasse here that needs to be they have to go past this impasse to actually have De Gea stick at the club. And that hasn't happened yet. Now, what that is that wages? Is that Ten Hag? Is that De Gea? Is that the club? Is that transfer budget? I don't know. For me, I say that there is no smoke without fire, as I've said the last week or so when it comes to the goalkeeping position, that if Ten Hag truly, really wanted David De Gea to stay at Manchester United, then this would have been agreed ages ago. Ten Hag did say, in fairness, in all of those interviews that he did when he was asked about De Gea, we want him to stay, he wants to stay, we'll find each other. Well, somehow, some way, they haven't found each other just yet, and they haven't got long left, despite United saying, well, there's not much of a real deadline. That June 30 thing, we can still agree something afterwards, which of course they still could, but then De Gea's free and open to go anywhere. He's free and open to go anywhere at this point, really, as well. He can sign a pre-contract if he wanted to with any club at this point in time. But my point is that clearly there's still something blocking this, and my theory is, and again, this isn't insider information, this isn't scoops, this is just my feeling on it, is that it's Ten Hag looking at his budget and saying, how can I make this work? How can I bring in another goalkeeper? How can I bring in maybe a new number one that can do more of what I want my goalkeeper to do? Not to say that David De Gea doesn't do everything that Ten Hag wants, because he does the majority of it. You know, he won the Golden Gloves last season and made big saves, but he also made mistakes, and also he cannot do the distribution to the level that Ten Hag wants him to do, or expects his goalkeeper to be able to distribute the ball in a game and be press resistant and be composed and pick out passes, short and long passes too. I'm not saying every pass has to be an Edison, 70-yard, crossfield pass or anything like that, but it's more just that under pressure, when you've got a striker hunting you down, you don't make a mistake, you don't put it out for touch. It's that kind of stuff that Ten Hag is looking for. So I do find it quite curious too that, according to this report, his representatives are kind of leveraging the fact that there are other priorities. So they think that because there are other priorities this summer, then United will essentially make a financial decision and decide to keep him at the club because they can't afford to buy another goalkeeper. Which I would say, from that point of view, you would go, you're not really backing yourself there, are you? Your representatives are going, nah, there's other things they need to do. They need to get a striker. They need to get a midfielder. Goalkeeper's low down the list. You're all right. Surely the response should be, you're all right because you're good enough. You're all right because you're one of the best goalkeepers in the world, right? That seems a very defeatist mindset and defeatist attitude from De Gea and his representatives, if indeed that is the case. So my sort of thought process hasn't really changed on this in the last few days or so, the last week or so really, particularly over the last 7 days, with those reports that Andre Onana's agent was in Manchester having conversations with Manchester United, and that it does feel like it, doesn't it, that interest really is concrete. The only thing I think that changes that is that if United decide they have to make a financial decision when it comes to the goalkeeper situation, and they decide, you know what, we can't stretch the budget. We're still trying to figure it out, and that seems to me also why all of this stuff that's been going on, and maybe the slowness of our window, is because they're still totally not sure how they're going to stretch their budget. We saw that they wanted to get Mason Mount for initially around 40 million quid. Now, once Chelsea have gone up to say, we want around 65, they're going, okay, how's that going to work then with the striker that we want to get, and how does that work with the goalkeeper that maybe we want to get to? They're still trying to figure out how much can we divvy up to spend on all of these players that we want to get. For me, as I mentioned, the priority goes striker, goalkeeper, midfielder. And my concern is that they might just say, you know what, we just... That, for instance, if we're going to get Caicedo, which I still don't think we will, I still think we'll ultimately end up signing Mason Mount, but they go, if we're going to get Caicedo, that's going to be 80 million. Oh, okay. Striker, we're going to get Højlund, but we initially thought we were going to get him for 40 million euros. It's actually going to be a bit more than that. Maybe we can't afford that goalkeeper. You know what? It's cheaper to give De Gea a reduced contract, and we'll agree to that. And again, then it becomes a financial decision, and they just go, okay, De Gea signs a new deal. So I don't think you can rule that out at this point. But as of right now, I still think the players that we'll get this summer are Andre Onana, Mason Mount, and Rasmus Højlund. I despite the Caicedo stuff yesterday, I still think that we're going to sign Mason Mount. We'll get to that in just a second. But I do feel like it's come to a natural conclusion for David De Gea. And obviously, we're probably going to find out within the next 7 days what United's decision is. And I don't think it's going to be a David De Gea decision. It's going to be a United decision. And the biggest part of it is going to be finances. Can they afford to get a new keeper with the money they save by letting De Gea go, and possibly player sales too? Because that part there also where it says sales could add another £100 million plus to Ten Hag's summer budget. But as of right now, and I know we still got plenty of time to go, we're heading into July, there's August, so there's still 2 and a bit months to go, but we still haven't really seen, one of these sort of bigger players that could fetch a bit more money for us this summer. Your McTominays, your Maguires, etc. Sancho. We haven't really seen them be linked with any clubs just yet in terms of real concrete stuff. There'd been rumours about possibly using them as part of a Declan Rice deal. There'd been very, very light rumours of Sancho to Spurs. Alanga, that's like a 10 million thing. We know Bailly and Tellers are going, but they're not going to raise a ton of money. The Henderson one, we don't really know how much we're going to get for him, but he will go. But again, you know, you're looking at that 100 million pounds that could be added on, and you're going, okay, well, where is that coming from? Which players are you going to let go? Which players are you going to move on to make that happen? And it just kind of feels like, doesn't it, that they're still trying to, and I say they, I mean, you know, John Murto and the other people involved in the transfer negotiations are still trying to figure out which pieces they want to put in place to put this puzzle together. And the puzzle is bringing those sort of 3 or 4 big players and also offload a load of big players. And they're almost very reluctant to commit to anything at the moment in case they screw up the remainder of their plans. But eventually, they've got to do something. So, as I said, my prediction for the goalkeeping situation is that despite these reports, or this report rather, I still think that David De Gea will exit the club, and Andre Onana will be his replacement. As I mentioned, what was quite interesting about this too was Manchester United's goalkeeping scout Tony Cotton spoke to Sky Sports News about David De Gea's future, and it kind of got, I felt, misinterpreted, because the quote that a lot of people went with was "watch this space," and people said, "Oh, watch this space. Does that mean he's trying to say that De Gea is going to stay?" But when you actually listen to the interview, and it's like 2 minutes, it's not very long, he essentially says, I know what all you know, which is not that much. You know, he praised De Gea, which is a Manchester United employee. Of course he's going to praise David De Gea. He said he's been one of the most consistent goalkeepers and did very well last season and all this kind of stuff. But he said, I'm not privy to David De Gea's contract negotiations. I don't know what's going on with David De Gea's contract negotiations. I thought what he did speak really well on, actually, was he spoke about how these things get played out in the media so much. He said because we're Manchester United, and it's something that we say all the time, isn't it? Because we're Manchester United, every single step of everything we do, takeover, transfers, or whatever in between, gets played out in the media for clicks and views and whatever it may be. So it becomes so monotonous and redundant to us when we watch this every day, and really laborious. And we're like, oh my goodness me, can we just get a conclusion on this? And it's the same with David De Gea too. But he also pointed out that, you know, we're linked to a lot of people, and as he mentioned, a lot of the people we're not even interested in, or we don't really even know of. You know, we get linked to a lot of people, so just because we're linked to him, he said it isn't a concrete indication of either way that we're going. But he said, I don't know what's going to happen with David De Gea. And look, he's a scout. He's a scout. So he'd have scouted goalkeeping targets when David De Gea had 5 years left on his contract, 3 years, 4 years, however long left on his contract, let alone a week left on his contract, because that's his job. His job is to scout potential additions, particularly a goalkeeping scout, in the goalkeeping department. So I wouldn't take too much stock of his interview that he did with Sky Sports News. He praised De Gea, and he said we'll have to wait and see what happens. So it was quite non-committal. So again, I saw people going, oh, that's a sign. I don't really see it a sign of anything. But again, we'll wait and see what happens with De Gea. Certainly we'll find out more within the next week. Now, Mason Mount, of course, this is quite interesting because as I kind of predicted yesterday, and as a lot of the Mason Mount stuff that happened yesterday has kind of been recycled today. It's been largely quiet on the transfer front, it must be said. And the information is still the same when it comes to Mason Mount. So, of course, it was the big story last night that United were walking away, or certainly calling their interest in Mason Mount, and they were looking towards alternative midfield targets, the big one being Moises Caicedo from Brighton, who would be available for around 80 million quid. Now, the reason they were stepping away from this Mason Mount drama, this Mason Mount transfer negotiations, because Man United feel like Chelsea are being unreasonable. They feel like Chelsea's desire of £65 million, a total package, is again unreasonable for a player that's got 1 year left on his contract, where they feel the precedent's already been set with selling Mateo Kovacic for £30 million. Last year they signed Raheem Sterling for around £47 million. He had a year left on his contract too, so they feel like Chelsea are putting on a Manchester United tax, and they're trying to take them for mugs, trying to take advantage of them. Meanwhile, Chelsea say, well, of course it's a little bit different between Kovacic and Mount, because Kovacic is nearly 30 and he's not an English player, whereas Mason Mount is an English player, he's a homegrown player, and he's 24 years old, so there's going to be a bit more on there. So there is this big discrepancy there, and now what we certainly had a lot last night was both sides, United and Chelsea, really kind of briefing the media. They were throwing a lot of stuff out there and hoping that a lot would stick. And it included, again, United, we're walking away, we're going for Moises Caicedo. It included Chelsea saying, wow, if Man United don't get him, he's going to go to Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich wants him. And I think both sides kind of looked at it and went, I don't know if I believe either of you. We still, for me anyway, like I said, I still think Mason Mount's going to end up signing with United eventually. Now, Fabrizio Romano has given a couple of updates regarding this today. He has said, quote, more on the Mason Mount situation. The Manchester United £55 million bid remains valid. The decision made together with Ten Hag, there's no chance to overpay, so United are not willing to go higher. United want Mason Mount, as he's showing a strong desire to join the club, but they won't make any unrealistic bid. Mount's side is still believing that he'll leave. And again, I think that's the key thing there at the end too, is that from Mason Mount's perspective, he's frustrated. His side is frustrated because he probably sides with United in that he goes, I think Chelsea are being unreasonable. United have put in a decent bid, a fair bid. Let me go. Otherwise, I'm going for a free. And this was kind of echoed by Romano in another update just a few minutes ago. At the time of recording this video, he said, quote, understand Mason Mount's side stance remains clear. There's no plans to sign a new deal as things stands. Man United now or a free agent in 2024. Regarding the Bayern Munich interest, he said, quote, Tuchel is a big fan, but no bid/talks with Bayern as of now. United's 55 million bid is still valid, but they won't wait forever. So that's quite interesting because Romano's basically just completely dispelled the notion that Bayern Munich are interested in him, which again kind of suggests that actually that was all. That's just Chelsea leveraging to say, oh, there are other people interested. No, they're not. Mason Mount wants to go to Manchester United. Because Mason Mount wants to go to Manchester United, no one else is in for him. And Mount is saying, look, if you don't let me go now, I'm just going to sit on my contract for a year. And I'll go on a free next year. I'm not signing a new deal. Let me go. And United feel like, hey, we're not going to overpay. So everything, in my opinion, again, and I know people said, oh, Owen, you're being negative and all this kind of stuff. I just felt yesterday was a big exercise in posturing and leveraging. I really did. From United saying we're going to go to a different target to Chelsea saying, well, there are other people in for Mason Mount. And eventually they'll meet. Eventually they'll meet in the middle. I think United are looking at Chelsea's FFP situation and saying, it's the end of the month in 5 days' time. Because of that, you're going to have to accept eventually. And the player, you want to agree to his wishes. We'll eventually get the player and we'll eventually get the price that we want. And to be honest, I do agree with that. And if they do, United, then you would have to say, well done, John Murto, because you drew your line in the sand and it worked and you held your reputation. Because really, at the moment, if like his reputation, which doesn't really hinge on this because United's reputation in terms of doing transfers and negotiating is pretty poor anyway, but if he caved in and gave them 65 million, his reputation and certainly United's negotiating possibilities in this window would be a lot more difficult. Let's face it, because clubs would know, this guy's not for real. Every time they negotiate, they crumble. Well, it'll be fine. We'll get what we want eventually. And John Murto's got to be like, no, I've got to draw my line in the sand. I've got to uphold my reputation as well as Manchester United's reputation too, whatever little is left of it when it comes to negotiating transfers, because it's been so heavily damaged over the years. So in my opinion, again, and I might be wrong with this, and I said yesterday, I'd love for us to sign Moises Caicedo. I really would. I think that's a better signing than Mason Mount. It's a more expensive one, but I think he's more transformative and he's a much bigger improvement to our team than Mason Mount is. But Mason Mount was Erik ten Hag's first choice. He's the cheaper choice. In terms of if they get him for 55 million. And I felt yesterday was just a big exercise in posturing and leveraging from both sides to try and get what they want. But ultimately, I do think United will get the player. And it'd be interesting to see how this one does play out within the next 5 days. As I mentioned, that was largely kind of repeated from others today. Rob Dawson from ESPN saying that Manchester United were considering other midfield targets because of fears that negotiations with Chelsea for Mason Mount are stalling. Man United's latest offer for Mason Mount remains on the table, but inquiries have been made about the availability of other targets, including Moises Caicedo, Mohamed Kudus, and Taylor Booth as well. So, again, United, I guess, doing their due diligence on other signings and things of that nature, but I still do think ultimately that United will end up getting him, despite them saying that they're going to be looking at different targets. I think eventually they'll get who they want, and I think Mason Mount will get the move that he wants as well. But if we did get Moises Caicedo, I'm not scoffing at that at all. But again, we'll wait and see. So there you go, guys. A bit of an update, a bit of a latest news when it comes to transfer information, stuff of that nature. What's on tap for the remainder of the week? Well, it's the end of the week, so tomorrow we'll be live once again at 9 a.m. for the Transfer View. And of course, as always, if anything breaks throughout the day, throughout the evening, I'll be live here to give you a bit of an update as to how things are going in the Manchester United transfer window so far. And of course, hopefully, we'll get an update when it comes to takeover stuff too. Anyway, have a great Sunday, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Peace!